love that boogie boogie music. Makes me feel so good. I want to clap my hands, stamp my feet, tap my toes, do something crazy. I don't know what. Hi. All right. Patiently stand here and wait for the music to fade away. There it goes. Goodbye, music. See you at the end of the show. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, Watchwell is my name, and natural philosophy is my game. And here we are again one more time in the lower quarters of City Hall. And we're on a little Watchwell set that makes you think that I'm some kind of an eccentric old professor talking in front of a blackboard, and I have all my students in front of me. But in reality, I have the blackboard, but there are cameras and lights and everything else, so it looks different. But we try to make you think that it is like some kind of old professor talking. So, remember always, ladies and gentlemen, for those of you that have seen this show before, the emphasis always is to learn something. And this show being shot today is on the 2/1/05, which means the second day of February, in the year of our Lord 2005. And as promised from the last show was about the tsunami. In fact, I have to clean off all my board here. But now, as promised in the last show, I'm going to segue into the new, for this one here, we're going to talk about here, we get a shot here, the new 2005 Farmer's Almanac. And of course, that is the ongoing textbook. And so they arranged just a few things slightly different. So I'm going to point out a few things for you in this one, in terms of where the visible planet data is and the daily time corrections and so on and so forth. So then for those of you that have never seen this show before, you can follow along. And if you haven't bought one, they're still around. You spend $5 and you use it for the whole year. So it's a pretty good deal. So we're going to talk about some of our part in the Farmer's Almanac, and of course what I want to talk about today is the 24-hour system that makes reference to the stars, because I was reading the article by Carla Ulrich, who does it for City Pages, and I want to kind of give my hardcore Watchwellites a really good website to go to, so you can follow that stuff, because it's not real obvious. I mean, unless you are really a real astrology nut. So I'm going to try to cover that today. Kind of something I've wanted to do for a long time, but it's something where you have to put together a pretty solid block of time to do. So that's what I'm going to do today. I'm going to try to keep it kind of contained into what I think I can accomplish. Sometimes Watchwell starts babbling, and I babble, and I don't get to my own point. And then if I have some time at the end of the show, I said I was going to include what I call the Phil puns. And the Phil puns are funny because my friend Phil Krieger, who lives in Mill Valley, California, always sends me puns. But also I like the idea of the Phil, because then some of them are kind of sophisticated, so then I can say they're kind of like philosophical puns. So we get to the end, we'll put that in. So we have a nice show for you today, and of course to my hardcore Watchwellites, I apologize if I can't always get the shows out, about now. It's about every 3 weeks, because I still have family and other things and other commitments, but we get them out when we can. So we try to avoid the reruns, but we try to keep our material somewhat fresh. But nonetheless, people stop both me and Bernie, and they stop and they tell us that they appreciate our efforts, and so it makes it all worthwhile. So let me get rid of the tsunami notes. I remember the last show, just 25 words here or less. Remember, the tsunami was devastating, and now the count, of course, is up to 175 and counting. And to quickly paraphrase, the reason why the tsunami was as devastating as it was is because the tremendous force coming from the water, of course, because of the density difference. I'm just going to verbalize this. The density difference was that water is approximately 800 times more dense than air, and hence it was the density difference that made the tsunami such a horrible tragedy. And I hope that they can get the thing rebuilt. And if there's some new material that comes out about it, I'll get back to it. But anyway, let us shift gears. So here we are today. Remember, starting the show, we'll have on our P.O. box on the screen. So if you have questions or comments, you can send them to that P.O. box. But now remember, the Lions share today is I want to spend a little time with the EO Farmer's Almanac and point out a couple of the pages that I use throughout the year, and then I'm going to try to explain the 24-hour. Like I say, we'll call it the FA, the Farmer's Almanac. And then the other thing I want to try to explain is what's called the 24-hour star system, and it's interesting because it goes hours, minutes, second. Okay, hours, minutes, second, and it's interesting to note that that of course on our regular, you all know, if you live on the planet Earth, we have the 24-hour system for our clocks. The whatever, 12 and then 3 and then 6 and 9 and so on and so forth. And we have that system. We have that 24, 60 minutes in an hour and 60 seconds in a minute. And then we have 24 hours in a day. Well, probably a lot of you don't even know that the people who are into the cosmic business, who study the positions of the stars, people in astronomy, is that there's actually a 24-hour system similar for a full year's rotation, okay? And then, but the way it starts and goes around is not really quite as obvious as just understanding, 1 hour clock. And I'm going to try to explain that today because when you go to these various websites, especially the one I'm going to tell you to go to, is that's the system they use. And if you don't understand it, then it won't make sense when you try to figure out, what a certain number means for a position of a planet, or a position of the moon, or a position of even the sun, or a certain constellation. So that'll take a few minutes of my time to try to get that out of my body. But I think it's worthwhile because, again, that's the whole concept of this program, is as you are riding the planet, you have your own little track, but of course then you have to understand, what is going on around you. And if you understand the big picture, then it's easy to understand the small picture. He said as he rolled up his sleeves. All right, now, the pat on my head. Somebody was asking me about this horrible week, but I'm not going to get in that today. I tell the story about every other program, like a broken record, but I'll tell it next time. I'll repeat the story. But today I kind of want to get into the material. And ladies and gentlemen, now that my young daughter is now going to college, so now that we're like equivalent of starting a semester of college, well, we're now starting a semester of life. So again, what I want to do is I want to point out a few pages. As you know, ladies and gentlemen, I've been for years using this as like the ongoing textbook because it's like the hands-on. Like a broken record here. You can go to the library and get, more sophisticated books on astronomy, but of course this was the very hands-on. Of the terms of the sunrises, the sunsets, the position of the planets, the position of the stars. So that's it. So they changed a few things. So I'm just going to cite a couple pages here. And so for the hardcore watchwellites, I want you to be aware of it. Now, basically, for this particular program, now, okay, so FA here is, FA is going to be the acronym here for it. FA means Farmer's Almanac. And I'm just going to cite a couple pages here for now. The hardcore people who buy the book year after year and follow along, they already know it. But in case this is your first year, I'm just going to cite a couple pages here, okay? This is like just like being in school. Okay, boys and girls, now please pay particular attention to the numbers in the material that I'm calling reference to, because I will be asking questions later in the course. And page 171. Okay, and this one is what's called the visible planets. The visible planets. Also, I'll just put down visible planets. BLANETS. And what I'm going to try to do in here, now what they do in the Farmer's Almanac, okay, let's go to that particular page I just signed into. Let's go, in fact, to page 170. So what they do is they have a little article called The Visible Planets. Okay, well, I won't show it. It just looks like a big spreadsheet with all kinds of numbers and so on and so forth. Again, for the people who aren't into this, you won't get it. But for the people who are, I'll just help you clarify, what you already know, or help you get a little bit more out of it. But what they do is they have the visible planets, meaning Mars, Venus, Jupiter, Saturn, and they have a little bit about Mercury. But for the most part, for the average stargazers, pretty much Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn pretty much are the ball game, because Mercury is so elusive you almost never see it, and then Saturn and Neptune and Pluto are just so far out there you never can tell the difference. But they have a thing on the visible planets, and they call the attention about approximately, they move pretty fast. It's approximately every 11 days. like they cite out, where the position of a particular planet is on January 1st, January 11th, January 21st, February 1st, February 11th, February 21st, and so on and so forth throughout the year. So they do move around. And what I'm going to try to get out of my body today is the fact is that they give the times that a particular planet, is in the sky and whether it rises or sets. And that's not always real obvious, because if you want to kind of really figure out where it is in the sky, you have to know if they're giving a time for its rising, a time for its setting, and then you got to kind of putz with adding or subtracting approximately 6 hours to visualize it like the sun being overhead at noon. That's kind of like the analogy. And it's not real obvious. So what I'm going to try to do is explain this 24-hour star system. Then you can go to any particular site, and then they give you the numbers. And I'm going to give a good example today. And then you can go kind of like in a geometric circle and see where the planet is, and then it'll make more sense. So again, that's just something more. I mean, it's free to look at. They don't charge you to look at the stars, So that's one section that you can always get a little more fun out of. Every year, I try to get a little bit more out of the old book here, because there's just always something more. So this is a particular part. Again, if you haven't followed along before, study that page, 170, 171. Okay, then there's another part I'm going to call your attention to. Now, what Watchwell talks about relentlessly, ladies and gentlemen, relentlessly on this program is what I call the daily calendar, okay? D-A-I-L-Y. I got this one right there. Daily. I'm a bad speller. D-A-I-L-Y, yeah. The daily calendar, okay? And those are the pages that run from, and they in effect are the 12 months of the year, but of course they give much more information. And those are the ones that I use all the time. They start on page 180, okay? They start on page 180. And those are the ones that I reference all the time, because what they do is they give, of course, the moon phases, which are in some calendar, but this is, of course, much more sophisticated. They give the sunrise, the sunsets, the declination angle, the amount of sunlight or darkness in a day, and so on and so forth. So again, that's something that I use all the time. It's very, very helpful. Okay? And then there's one more piece of the puzzle here I want to get to before I get to my 24-hour clock, and that is the one what they call the section on what's called the time corrections. Okay? And that's another one. And this section on it's called time corrections. And what that means is that when you go and you look up, like say, the visible planets or the constellations, sometimes next to the letter, they'll have like little letters like A and B and C and D next to the letters. And the reason is that all the information given in the Farmer's Almanac is for Boston, and I've repeated this before. It's for Boston, okay? And so obviously we're on a slightly different latitude and a slightly different longitude. So if you look up, if you go in the one on called the time corrections, and that's on pages 235 to 239. But of course, if you're most interested in Wausau, because that's where we live here, I mean, you can look up different stuff if you want to find out what's going on in San Francisco or Buenos Aires or somewhere else. You can look it up. But for Wausau, if you look up for this section of our little Wausau, that happens to be where we live, that is on the last page. That is on page, I think it's on page 239. And I'll call out something real interesting quick. That's on page 239 of Wausau. And then it gives the longitude and the latitude, and then, of course, then it gives the corrections. So then it's like for A, whatever the corrections. If you look up something, it says an A correction, then it's add 4 minutes. If it's a B correction, you add 24. If it's a C correction, add 24. If it's a D correction, add 25. And if it's an E correction, add 25. So you can adjust the times. But it's interesting to note that on Wausau that they give the latitude and the longitude as 44 degrees. Oh, well, that's degrees. Degrees and 58 minutes. That's rather interesting. 58 minutes. So that's going to kind of get into this other minutes. And that's the north latitude. North 44 degrees. And then the longitude they give as 8930. Now this is interesting. 89 degrees, 38 minutes. And you have heard me say before, again, repeats, and then this is the longitude, LONG. You've heard me say this before, is that on where we live in the Wausau area, which is pretty cool in a way, is that we are at a kind of like a unique part of the world, in that very, 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 very close to where we are, it is, like I said, the 45th latitude north. This would be this line here, okay? And then this would be the 90 latitude west. So it'd be 45 north, and the 90 latitude west is like where we are in the world. So you can see, 4 degrees and 58. So if you add 2 to this, 1 degree is just like an hour. 1 degree is 60 minutes, and then that's breaking down into 60 seconds. So if you add 2 little seconds to this, that ends up being 45 degrees, okay, like an hour. And then this one, the same thing here. You take the 38 and you add 12 to it, then that, of course, would go to 90 degrees. See, so that's kind of cool. So you got to understand the concept of hour, minute, second, or in this case, the degree is like an hour, so it'd be hour and then minutes, and then if this was some second measurement, it would get in there. So those are some of the key parts you want to keep in mind of the Farmer's Almanac, because those are the things that I use all the time. And if I make reference to them, if you're kind of like not watching the show, or you're just a new watcher, and then you'll just say, well, what the heck is he talking about? See? So it helps to know. So now what I got to do here, I got to watch my time. Okay, I got a few minutes here. I'm going to try to explain here real quick about the 24-hour system on the annual cycle, and then how that works with with the planets, and you can try that one. So what I did is I have a very first of all, let me get the website out here. Now for those of you, I'll tell you why I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to combine. See, for those of you that here, can you get close up here, Andy? Now this is the current. I'm always very, very hands-on here. I try to impart hands-on information. Now this is the very, very most current version of the Carla Aldrich Cosmic Watch that appears in the city pages. And then of course she goes through the thing about what are the kind of like the constellations du jour, that are visible. And again, for a lot of you, if you're not up on all the gobbledygook of the intensities of the stars and the positions, you just feel kind of snowed. You don't know what's going on. So I found a pretty good website, and I'm going to give it to you right now. And again, I'll talk about this in the future. And the name of the website is a really good one. It is called, let me get for you the number. It should work if you put in this number. It should work. It's called FOUR, 4 Mil Lab, and then it's something like CH. I'm not sure if that's the extension, but if you just do this 4 Mil Lab, and then it's got a slash like Your Sky, and it's really a pretty cool site because hope you can read that. That joke real good. I'll mention it again, and because what it does is you can put in like your longitude, your latitude, like we can put in the 45th latitude, and then it gives you the stars of the day and where they are, and you get a lot of extra information. But what I'm going to impart to you real quickly today is the concept of this, like I said, the system of the hours, minutes, seconds. Okay, so I looked up yesterday. So here it was, ladies and gents. So I'll tell you what I did. So yesterday on 1/31, today's the first. So yesterday afternoon, which was the 31 of the year of our Lord, 2005, and I went to the website and I said, well, okay, what are the positions of the sun and the planets on this particular day? Okay, and so I quickly went down the line, and so I'm just going to tell them all. So it tells you, that like, the sun was something, 20 hours, 58 minutes and 0 seconds and such and such and such and such. And then it tells you the one, so it goes down the line. It says that the moon was 13 hours, 29 minutes and 16 seconds. And Venus was 19 hours, 59 minutes and 37 seconds. And Mars was 17 hours, 41 minutes and 42 seconds. Jupiter was 13 hours and blah, blah, blah. So it goes on. So you look at that and say, well, what the heck? That's nice, but what does it mean? What does it have to do with the price of the eggs that the people in Peking are buying for their food? You don't know. So I hope I can at least get it started. This is a little complicated. I hope I can kind of get the concept out for you, at least enough to get it. Even when I think I can do something that's easy, it gets hard. So you have seen me in the past. Quickly here, I'm jumping around. So quickly, this is kind of like my star chart of all like the constellations. And then this is the chart that I've been kind of working on over the years. And I'm trying to incorporate this another number system. And so I'll keep on refining this, and when I finally get it down, I'll get it out to you so you can have it. So what it does is it goes like it's the dates of the year, like 12/21, 1/21, 2/21, and then also the star system that begins with the Star of Pisces. And I'm going to try to explain that here in a minute. And then the Star of Pisces goes, it starts basically on it corresponds with the first day of autumn in terms of where it starts. It'll be like 9/21, 10/21, and then it goes 24 slots, like an hour clock, like 9/21. Then it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and so on. So when they were talking about that business where they said that the sun, like in this particular case, that thing I just cited to you, it said that on the first day, close to the 1st of February, it said that the sun was like 20. What did they say? It was like 20 degrees 58 minutes, which is almost 21. The sun is here. And then the moon, it said that the moon, because this is just one day before the third quarter, it said the moon's position was 13 hours and 29 minutes, which would be like 13 and a half. So it's like in the middle. So it makes sense. But what you have to understand, and this is where it gets really confusing, is like the 0 point actually starts like on like the first day of autumn, which is equal to the Vernal Equinox, but in reality it has to do with the fact that this is where it's kinky. It has to do with the fact is that the astronomers, or the people who figured this out a long time ago, they figured that people look at the stars at 9 o'clock at night, or 2100 hours. This is where it's really strange. It's 2100 hours. So how it turns out is the following. Let's see, how can I do this? Okay, let's just make it like this. I'm winging this here. So here's the planet. This is like our planet Earthy Poo, okay? This is our Earth, and this is going to be like I'm going to make this here. I'm going to make this like the planet rotates counterclockwise. So I'm going to make this little point here, which is going to be 2100 hours, or like 9 o'clock at night. And so what they're assuming is that on approximately, this is so strange, it says that on approximately the 10th day of the 11th month of the year, that the Earth is in such a position that at 2100 hours, you're standing over here on the planet Earth, and you're looking out and you're seeing the Star of Pisces. And as you see the Star of Pisces, that ends up being like the 0 point. And then from that 0 point, then it moves out, like 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5, and then 6, and 7, and 8, and 9, into this whole business. But it really gets confusing because it really has to do with the fact that again, it's just made on the assumption that that the way you're viewing the stars is like off by 45 degrees. It's really crazy. So you go back to the cosmic thing. So you're going to say that on the 21st of March, in reality, everything is kind of cocked off like 45 degrees. I'm not explaining that the best, but I'm trying my hardest. It's really hard to understand why it was chosen that way. And let me go back to my chart here, see if I can show it really quickly. Again, it doesn't matter how you necessarily think about the exact starting point. If you just take your word for it that at some point it starts like a clock, then you hear these other figures, and then it'll make sense. So what I'm going to do real quick here, I'm going to set it up. I'm going to set up our planet for there we go. For the 20, I'm going to set it for November 10th. Real quick, let me count my chart. Then I'll save myself here. So we're going to say that on November 10th, the planet Earth is here, and the sun is approximately in the 15th hour, in so many minutes and seconds in the system, okay? And then at that point, this ends up being that 2100 hours that I talked about, and that ends up being equal with that 921. That's confusing, but just remember that as it starts here, as the Earth is here, that ends up being the 0 point, and it just carries around. At some future point, what I'll do is I will get this particular chart a little more hammered out, and then you work with that little thing, and then I'll run some of the numbers out of there, or I will take excerpts from Carla's articles, and you will see that it'll all make a lot more sense. Now, let me say one more real quick thing about this particular lab site that I talked about, that 4 mil. That sky, your sky. What's cool about it is that once you get to that site and you learn to fine tune it a little bit, once you can fine tune it a little bit, you can choose any date. So, say for instance, a quick scenario for the Wausau people would be you could go to like the back issues of Carla's articles, and when she talked about seeing some particular site or some planetary lineup or so on and so forth, you could plug in that date, and then you could bring it up, and you could see exactly what the star or planet position was that was in the article. And that's what's cool, because you can make it kind of timeless. And so there'll be more of that coming. This is I knew this would be a little bit difficult to explain today, but you see, you stick with Watchwell and he will get you right. Now, I got time to do one thing. I got time to do one of my philosophical, I lost my time here, philosophical pun. My old friend Phil Krieger always sends me these philosophical puns, and I got a really bad one for you. This one is so horrible. Actually, I'll do just one, and here it is. This is the bad one. I did this one about a year ago, but I hope that you don't remember. So here's my last one here, just before my music. Mahatma Gandhi, as you know, walked barefoot most of the time, which produced an impressive set of calluses on his feet. He also ate very little, which made him rather frail, and with his odd diet, he also suffered from bad breath. What did this make him? It makes him a super callous fragilistic text by Alice. I think with that one we'll go over home. See you later, alligator. And read that Farmer's Almanac if you don't have one yet. Bye-bye.